All right, listeners. So I'm going to explain why I'm whispering here. It's because I have two 9-month-old babies, and they're asleep upstairs, and we've had a very hard time kind of scheduling this interview. So it's happening while my babies are in bed, and Brandon is in LA right now, and it's what three? What is it? 4 in the afternoon?
Yes, it is currently 3 in the afternoon here in Los Angeles, California.
Yeah. So
But yeah, this is our part 2 of
yeah. So
in the line interview with James.
yeah. So Brandon has just woken up. Can I tell them that?
Yeah. I'm on a series of deadlines, so
Yeah, this is the
I
life
keep
of an
pushing my
artist. It's the life of a working artist, and I am quite jealous. Like that is my favorite thing to do is just stay up very very late and work until the dawn, and I can't do it. I have to be up for my boys, and so I'm living vicariously through Brandon's life right now. Uh,
I think you've got a good setup these days, but yeah, I guess that'd be an interesting good thing to get into is
yeah,
is the life of an artist and how your life changes now that you're a father of two twin boys.
yeah. Wolfgang and Donovan are their names. Um, yeah. So all right, boys. Me and Uncle Brandon are going to do this interview, and they're going to be watching this in the future. You see. And so what we're going to talk about, Brandon?
So yeah, I think this is the second part of us getting into essentially the Who Lifehouse project, and
Yeah,
I'll give kind of a rough breakdown of my impression of everything. And you can correct me if I get anything wrong. But essentially, it was a project where Heavy Metal Magazine and Pete Townsend of the Who reached out to you,
yeah,
and there's a and in 1971, Pete Townsend had started um, this idea for a script that then became a series of films that never happened, and then eventually, uh, you know, 50 years later, they reach out to you to do this massive comic project,
yeah,
which becomes this huge endeavor. But unfortunately, it being such a huge endeavor, heavy metal gets a little trepidatious of you taking too long on it
yeah,
and cuts you out of the own project that you've been working on all this time and brings in other people to finish it.
yeah.
But then because of the pandemic, it takes much longer, and so now there's this weird version of the book out where it's. Have you seen the finished book? That's another question.
So yeah, like I will say like the people who made the book like did an incredible job. Like their backs were against the wall. They had to finish the whole thing in 3 months. This is after like waiting more than a year for all the rights to kind of get sorted out because it started out heavy metal, then it went to another publisher, and so like a lot of legal kind of back and forth had to happen, and finally after all of that, like years later, like these guys who are impossible, very talented artists, very nice people, and they just had to kind of finish it off really fucking quickly, and it was a Herculean task, and they did it, and but of course because I knew what I was going to do with this, and heavy metal had told me like swing for the fences, try and win an Eisner Award, like try and do your best work. Like I have this idea in my head of like this is like I know what this book was supposed to look like, so it's a little hard for me to like see the finished result because it was this like potential masterpiece, I suppose. Like that's what they'd asked me to do, So so yeah, like what I thought like this for this session I'd start out with some of the finished artwork because we showed like a lot of pencils and things and roughs in the last
Mm-hmm.
chapter. So I'm gonna make this big, yeah. So this is the character of Mary, and this is the experience suit, right? Like the experience suit is one of the iconic sort of. It's the thing that Pete Townsend always talked about when he talked about this project. This suit that the inhabitants of this like world would sleep in every night, and while in the suit they get like what Pete calls like a zipped lifetime, like a lifetime of like virtual content is sort of beamed into their brains as they slumber in these suits, and they do
Right, like
this
a 1971 VR suit, essentially.
exactly, yeah. So I had to design that, and I wanted it to look kind of kind of iconic, like the Star Watcher in Geiger's, like the navigator in Geiger's Alien,
Yeah,
um,
certainly.
or like something that Mobius might have designed, or I just wanted it to kind of have that kind of timeless 1970s, like something that could have been like Mobius and Jodorowsky's Dune or something. I wanted it to kind of be very sort of pop art, very sort of bold graphic shapes and colors, but like yeah, like I wanted it to sort of belong to a 1970s imagination, I suppose. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and I think like when I mentioned that like to heavy metal, they were like, please don't make this kind of like a retro sort of throwback thing. Like we want you to just sort of think with modern. This is like it's not a throwback. This is a living work of art that's like a new thing. But
It's
I
a fascinating idea because I feel like a lot of your work is just also taking from the past and making your own version too. It almost might be one of those things where there's a certain element of like having to bend the truth when dealing with people that aren't artists to talk about art.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah. No, absolutely, yeah. That's right. Like they didn't want me to kind of be looking backwards, but that was sort of I thought it had to be like it had to be a kind of retro future thing. It had to have the feeling of like Jodorowsky's Dune or something like that because that's
Right.
because that
Yeah, in a lot of ways, that stuff is more advanced and more futuristic than stuff that would come out now that
yeah,
looks very now.
yeah. I it would not make sense to kind of make because all of the ideas in this are so sort of their time. Like there's no mobile phones in this story. There's no internet. It's definitely like a 1970s retro future, and it
Right, or even the amount of wires required.
the wires, which is like a definitely like a feature, like an iconic feature of the story. Like
Yeah,
Pete has that anecdote about Roger Daltrey not understanding the story because where would they find all that wire? Like you have to put the
yeah.
wires in there. You have to put all this kind of degraded old tech in there, like or it won't feel like Lifehouse for me. So yeah, like but you can see like just I suppose in a way you can sort of see why this thing didn't get finished. Like I was trying to do like Jeff Darrow levels of detail, and
Sure.
and then I was like doing all this cross hatching, and it's like I was really just like you can see I was like just shooting for the moon. Um, so
Do you
yeah,
think it's like a Gerhard influence on you, the way you're drawing the backgrounds and the black and white panels?
what a Darrow influence you say?
Oh, I said Gerhard from
Oh,
Cerebus.
Gerhard. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like for
Like the
what?
top left panel of the bird, I feel like you could. It almost looks like it's from like Cerebus the manga. You know?
Yeah, for whatever reason, like yeah, I for whatever reason, Gerhard's work on Cerebus has kind of just had a hold on me lately, and I can't not crosshatch, and it really slows me down. So like I have to kind of like unprogram myself from this impulse. But yeah, like absolutely, it's Gerhardy. Um, so yeah, this is the character of Mary. So something's going wrong with her experience suit. Like you're supposed to have like these wonderful adventures every night, like that are better than your hibernate. They're all hibernating because like England has become uninhabitable after like
Mhm.
a third world war. England like missed the bombs. They became essentially Switzerland in that war. They were not bombed, but the world is now uninhabitable. So they're all in these deep hibernation suits, and they're supposed to be like living these exciting lives through the virtual reality, but it isn't happening to Mary. Like Mary is living the life of a prisoner, um, in it as a medieval peasant, and
Uh-huh.
so every night she wakes up in the same cell, and she tries to escape and she can't, and it's like just like an even grimmer version of her life, um, outside of the experience suits.
Right.
These
That's interesting.
Yeah, so these characters you can see here I was like inspired by do you know the painter Hieronymus Bosch?
Yeah, yeah. In
Yeah.
Las Vegas, there's weirdly a glass case in a bookstore
Oh
that
wow.
has a bunch of Hieronymus Bosch figures in there. It's
Ah,
like
yeah.
the Hieronymus Bosch action figure set.
He has such an incredible imagination, but like he does all these surreal. I have a huge book on Bosch here. This book was actually like presented to the Pope by Leonardo DiCaprio. There's like a photograph of him. Yeah, but like so
The Pope is like, I already have that.
yeah,
Thanks.
exactly, yeah. Um, so
I have the originals.
yeah. So like Bosch is like famous for like these like fantastical creatures and like hellscapes and things, but he's also like underrated as kind of a purveyor of like reportage. Like if you look at the houses in the back of his paintings, like you get all these strange higgledy piggledy like houses that were the houses that would have been there, like, and they're all like held up by sticks and like these really ramshackle affairs. And
Mhm.
and so I tried to take as much inspiration from that as I possibly could. Um, so yeah, Mary is, and she quite cryptically says, "I had to kill them. There was no other way." And the reader is not like let in on what that means, but you
Right,
know,
but it's just this nightmare life that she's experiencing through her
yeah,
escape,
yeah.
her a mental escape suit.
Um, no, now like had I finished this book, a close reading would reveal what she meant by that and what significance that line has. But alas, like these things are kind of like lost to they're lost to the alternate dimension where I actually did finish this book. you know?
Right. I mean, it's an interesting idea because I mean, I know you're a big fan of big numbers, and there's talk of Alan Moore and Bill Sienkiewicz's Big Numbers, which came out from was it Kevin Eastman's company, right?
It was Kevin Eastman, yeah. It was originally self-published by Alan's Mad Love company, and
Right.
then finally Tundra, which is Kevin Eastman, with the guys who
Tundra,
finished
right.
it off. Yeah,
Totally. Yeah. So it makes me feel like because isn't there's talk that at some point if somebody continued Big Numbers, it probably wouldn't be um, Sienkiewicz and Alan Moore, but
that's it. Like,
maybe that one it was at least abandoned by them rather than kind of being um,
yeah,
it'd be a much slower version.
it's such a shame. Like, I would love for Alan to finish that off, but if anyone else finished it off, it wouldn't be Alan, and who
Sure.
that's why we're reading it. So yeah, this is my completion chart for chapter one. This shows you exactly how far I was through with it, right? Um, so chapter one was all penciled and some inks. Then chapter two was it was all laid out, it was all scripted, and then there was some pencils.
I like how many like visually aesthetically pleasant graphs you make for just showing the process.
Yeah, I like to make graphs, and then there's chapter three, and there's nothing. That's kind of when the project went dead from my end. So yeah,
Okay, how many finished pages? Because you're showing us the 2-page spread that's finished. How many of like completely finished pages were left at the end by you?
so you can see that I this is how many pages I inked. So and then I guess I
So around 10.
colored the first page of it. I guess like the page I just showed you, I actually colored that after the fact. Like I kind of it was like after the project was dead on my end, I just like had to color something just to show myself what it would have looked like. Um, we also
Is the logo on the book yours as well, or
what's
is
it sorry?
that did you make the logo, the Lifehouse logo?
Yeah, where it's yeah, you can see yeah the word the who is
Cool.
kind of embedded in the middle of it. Yeah, yeah, I made
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Um, okay, so we got some more stuff here. We've got some concept art, which I would like to
Oh,
show you.
excellent.
Yeah. So this is the character of. Oh, okay. So yeah, let's go for the main character first. This is Mary, and I remember when I showed this character Mary to the publisher, he said
Mhm.
he said like no 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 like Mary is based on Pete's wife from the 1970s who was like a redhead, and then I said no 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 that was the character of Sally, and that's when I realized that I knew more about this project than most people. Um,
Sure.
eventually, I would come to realize that I knew more about it than Pete as well, like because he hadn't read the script for like 40 years, like so I was like telling him things about his story he didn't know.
Oh, because it'd been a while since he'd actually looked at the thing.
Yeah, yeah, and every time he tries to retell the story, it kind of changed in his mind. So
Sure.
yeah, and Mary is kind of like a cross between Lenny Kravitz's daughter, what's her name, Zoe Kravitz, and
Sure.
and Nat.
Zoe Kravitz, Batman fame.
What's that?
She's in the Batman movie with the Twilight guy.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. She's Catwoman. Yeah. So it's a cross between
There's that great scene where she complains about rich. She's complaining to Batman about the rich white guys that are just given things in the world or something.
Yeah.
And it's kind of ironic because she's talking to Bruce Wayne and she's also Lenny Kravitz's daughter. So it's like,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a meta irony in there. Yeah. No, it's funny. Like people have this idea that Batman is like a sexless character. You know, he's like a kind of a eunuch. But like these people just conveniently forget Catwoman exists, like the most sexual character in comic books.
I was going to go the darker direction of why is he always recruiting the same young trapeze boys?
That's also true. Yeah, like it's yeah, because he's a freak. That's why. um, so this is a 3D model. Well, it's a plan for a 3D model of the Lifehouse itself. So Mary leaves her home to travel to London to this underground concert venue called the Lifehouse. And so we built this as a 3D model so that we could like move the camera around and set up shots and so that it would always be consistent, like from whatever
Right.
angle we showed it from. So I designed this stage here. Um,
I want to point out to people that are kind of unfamiliar with the process that this is not a normal amount of extra work that somebody does on a book.
yeah,
That you're doing this like huge amount of pre-planning.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it basically looks like you're working with someone without a worry for time and a budget.
Right, exactly. Which maybe this is why it kind of got taken away from me. But yeah, like I sort of, I can't remember what the reason was. I kind of based it all around hexagons, but I'm sure there was like some kind of reason. But like everything's hexagonal. The stage, the
Right. Well, it looks
restaurant
like
bar.
what's this the very British Who symbol that's kind of the circle of colors within colors.
Yeah, that's actually the Royal Air Force. Like that's the logo for the Royal Air Force, which they kind of adopted, I suppose, as a sort of unofficial symbol for themselves. And I think that was because of
It
the
does
look
look a
of.
futuristic version of that as a hexagon, the circle.
It's exactly that. Yeah, it's exactly that. I think Peter Blake was the artist that first like started reappropriating that kind of iconography, and
Okay.
and Pete was a huge fan of Peter Blake. And actually, the reason I got the gig is because my work on Mouth Baby reminded him of Peter Blake, so that's why he chose me. Um,
Nice.
but like the work I did on this is nothing like Peter Blake. Like Mouth Baby is a book I did, which is it's just only like 30 pages long or less, and it's quite graphic. Like there's very minimal backgrounds, and this is not that. This is like me attempting to do Akira. You know, like
Yeah.
like I'm kind of over delivering. I'm just looking for a book. Oh yeah, here we go. So I discovered this like Jodelle like way afterwards, like after the project was finished. But like
Sure. I know that one.
I wish I'd discovered it beforehand because this type of graphic treatment would have been perfect. You know, these type kind of very minimal kind of backgrounds and things like that.
Yeah.
If I'd made it look a bit like Jodelle, like maybe I would have finished. But I just decided I was going to shoot for the moon. I decided I was going to. I just kind of had my "What would Otomo do" hat on, which is kind of a sure way to never finish anything, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like we all have this like want to be like what like I hope I get my 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 not cutting corners book out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and
Um,
again, they did tell me shoot for the moon, do your best work, and I really did try. So this is the main character. This is Bobby, and Bobby is like a musical genius. And in fact, the Who story Tommy, the reason it came about is because Pete was trying to write this, and Pete kind of had it in his head that this is the main character, this musical genius, and
is he also deaf, dumb, and blind?
he.
To see the bandages over his eyes.
I think that may have been my choice to make him deaf, to make him blind. He's not deaf, however. But yeah, he was a blind musical genius in. Oh yeah, I think maybe that was Pete's initial conceit that this guy was a blind musical genius, and so one of Pete's friends at the time was like, "Well, this idea is boring. Why can't he be a pinball wizard?" And Pete's like, "That's perfect." And he wrote pinball wizard, and the
Sure.
rest is history. But he eventually returned to the Lifehouse concept, and I guess you can kind of see you can see a sort of thematic coherency. Like you get this character Bobby, and then in Tommy, of course, we have Tommy, and then in Quadrophenia we have Jimmy. So like there's this kind of naming convention that's kind of clearly there's a coherency across these properties, but it was clear to me reading Pete's material that Bobby was not the main character, and I think that's why he was struggling to write it because it's really Mary's story. So like once I could kind of
Right. Yeah.
yeah, so once I kind of established that and figured that out, that Bobby was more of a mentor figure, the whole thing kind of fell into place. Um,
There's also a little bit of Prince. I feel like I know you're a big fan of Prince, and this
yeah,
he does feel like an older Obi-Wan version of Prince that we never saw.
yeah,
Weird.
exactly. I actually asked Pete if he could picture Bobby as Jimi Hendrix, and he said he absolutely could. Yeah, so he's sort of based more on. I think facially he's a bit more like Jimi Hendrix, but there's like an undeniable Princiness about him. Like actually, Prince there in the Purple Rain movie does wear like a blindfold with like lace coming from it and stuff. So there is like a little Prince there. It's also a bit
Yeah,
like
I see that. I see the Hendrix too,
yeah,
like in his outfit as well.
yeah, and it's a bit like Raiden from Metal Gear Solid,
Sure.
Raiden Revengeance. Like he has a kind of like a very stylish sort of eye patch. So this is like the kind of finished version of Bobby. I decided he was going to have
Oh,
a
that's even more Prince.
yeah, and I decided he was going to have a flute. Like I don't know why the flutes felt important, but like I think because I think because I didn't want it to be a guitar because like Pete actually wrote the Who into the Lifehouse story, and
Hmm.
I remember asking him like if this is like set in the future, why are the Who in it? Like why? How come you're in the movie, right? And like and he's like, what are you talking about? I'm in the movie. I'm not in the movie. And then it's like, oh wait, you haven't read this script in like 40 years. But he absolutely is. Like he and John Entwistle and Keith Moon are all just kind of like knocking about in this like nightmare future, and they're the house band in the Lifehouse.
Okay.
And I think like the publisher said like, yeah, that's like a kind of silly thing. Like you should probably cut that out. But I kind of didn't want to. Like I thought that was kind of a very fascinating thing. So I decided, well, actually, like I've read like interviews from the 1970s where Stanley Kubrick is talking about how important like cryogenic freezing is. Like people were genuinely taking cryogenic freezing seriously back then.
Sure.
Like there's an interview with Kubrick talking to Playboy magazine about how every government on Earth needs to start investing billions into cryogenic freezing because like death is going to be a solvable problem and we need to. And it's like a crazy thing because cryogenic freezing actually like human body cannot take being frozen cryogenically. Like a lot of tissue will die if you do that. And but I was thinking, okay, so if but hang on a minute, like if Jumbo the First is banning music, and surely the Who, with their many millions of dollars, would see the way the wind was blowing and cryogenically freeze themselves for a time when music is no longer banned, and it starts to kind of like fall into place. Like so like in this story, the Who have cryogenically frozen themselves to be thawed out by Bobby, who is working for or is once worked for the sinister government who controls everything. So it all kind of like dovetailed nicely and started to make a lot of sense. So I I really liked the fact that I was able to kind of like keep the Who in there, like in this future.
And I like the idea of figuring out how it would actually work
Yeah,
uh, in the science fiction world, and not just being like, "And the Who are here."
yeah,
And this is the Brit character who's the other
yeah.
main kind of fascist leader of the
That's
the,
Brick.
the
Yeah, who has a secret heart of gold. Like he kind of redeems himself. But yeah, like you can see his medals here. Like I tried to show like a bit of his history. Like we see the Iron Cross, which is like a am I getting this wrong? I think like the British. Okay, I'm going to show my ignorance here, but I think like the British government did issue Iron Crosses at one point, even though it's like a very Germanic. Like people think of this as like a very Germanic symbol, but the Iron Cross is something that. Am I getting this completely wrong? If I've got this completely wrong, I'm very embarrassed. But But yeah, like so the 7 shows that he's been fighting for Jumbo 7. The 6 means
Hmm.
he was part of the previous administration for Jumbo 6. So and then I forget what the other medals represent. But it shows that he has essentially been part of this organization even before the current Jumbo. Like he goes back a long way.
Right.
So I'm like trying to
So
show
is he like a general essentially, like the military leader of things?
he's a military leader, yeah, and he's obsessed with finding Bobby, right? Who is like this rogue. He and Bobby helped to build the experience suits, and we were later going to find out that the reason he's so obsessed with finding Bobby is not because he wants to take him down, but because he wants to save him because they were once lovers. So these were going to be like two gay characters. Now, had the guy who came to write the story after me like asked me, I would have told him all of this. But like he like actually wasn't kind of interested in like comparing notes, you know.
Oh, interesting.
So like a lot of
So
the
they took your kind of did you have a finished script that was then reworked? Do you think?
yeah, I had 2 issues scripted and I had like notes on every other issue. So yeah, that's what I had.
It's
Um,
such a weird game of telephone for you. It must be to see the idea that you had a clear. And I'm trying to think of that. Like I've had projects that have kind of fallen to the wayside for me, but it's strange to see. And I guess in some ways I've taken like my run on Profit was a bit of, Tom Strong was basically going to, if I'm remembering right, Tom Strong was basically going to be what Alan Moore's idea of what Profit was going to be.
is that right? I
And I
didn't know
remember, yeah, because a lot of those characters I think were kind of were at one point he was going to kind of take over Liefeld's thing, and so I remember piecing apart together like what were other versions of this. This is kind of going off the rails against your thing here because I didn't end up using much Alan Moore stuff, but that was there the idea of these pieces
that. Yeah.
that could have gone. You see the height chart.
Oh yeah, the height chart. Yeah, okay. But it is interesting. Like I mean, and Alan had a similar experience. Like he had so many
Sure.
plans for that America's Best Comics line, and they all kind of like he had to kind of give it all up. So I think everybody in comics knows this pain a little bit, but I think most creative disciplines have like something like this. Like movies, like Terry Gilliam has so many like projects he meant to make but like never could. I think everyone.
Yeah, there's a documentary about his Don Quixote, I think, that
Oh
never
yeah.
came to
Yeah,
fruition.
Don Quixote. I saw another documentary about him finally finishing Don Quixote, and he was just like so bitter and so kind of crushed by the whole thing. But he finally got it through, you know. But it's sad because like he never quite made the movie the way he wanted to. But yeah, you can see Jumbo is incredibly tall. I mean, I think like with the name Jumbo, she had to be huge, like.
Sure.
And if you look at her hat, it's the hat worn by Britannica, like the is like a kind of female representation of Britain, much like how Colombia is the female representation of America. So her costume is based somewhat on Britannica. Like
Okay.
I thought it would make sense for her to be like to fashion herself after this like folkloric figure because she sort of sees herself as like the den mother to the sleeping British people in this post-apocalyptic landscape.
Yeah, I like the theme of all the kind of striped patterns you're doing on everything.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I wonder. Yeah, I think I just wanted it to kind of be bold and pop arty and sort of. I feel like very much again like inspired by Jodorowsky. No, Mobius's designs on Jodorowsky's Dune. I think, but
Sure.
I don't think there's like kind of a thematic reason there's so many stripes. I think I just kind of like them. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, for me, it just seems like it's a takeoff of the of the circle within circle symbol we were talking about before, like
yes,
the Who
and you can see
became kind of the Who's.
another one here. Like this is by Christina Coyantes, who was helping out at this point. So this is all the jumbos. Like this is Jumbo 2, Jumbo 3,
Lady Gaga, if you will.
yeah, 2045, Jumbo 3, 2063, Jumbo 5
Nice.
is very kind of Alexander McQueen Bjork, like it's
Yeah.
2097. and then Jumbo 6 2119, and so Jumbo 7 is where we kind of rejoin the story. Here's the thing: I think they just kind of like I only kind of like skim read the finished project, but I think like some of these costumes just ended up being like Jumbo Seven's costumes, and like
Okay.
I saw like a lot of like
Things that her grandmother had laying around that she put on.
yeah, I mean that, yeah, I guess if you put it like that, like it makes sense. Yeah,
I like that Jumbo 4.
Jumbo
She almost
Four.
has a Wizard of Oz look to her.
Yeah, Christina's immensely talented. Like very, yeah, I really like this one. Three is my favorite. Um,
So did you bring her on just because she has a good design sense to kind of have both mother?
yes, like I brought her on because it was we've been looking to work together, and this was a huge project that like one person couldn't possibly do, and like I really just had to bring on as much help as I could. So I had
Does she do comics?
what's it? Sorry.
Oh, does she do comics as well? I'm not familiar with the word.
She doesn't. She mostly does editorial illustration, but she's like back in the day, she used to help me out here and there. Um,
Nice work.
yeah, nice work. There's Jumbo next to Mary. This is like an early one. I kind of like that art style.
Like ballpoint pen.
Yeah, I should have just drawn the whole thing like this. That would have I would have finished it. uh, yeah, so there you go. That's like the con. Is that all the concepts? I think there's more, but let's see. Oh yeah, oh yeah, there is a few more here. There's the Lifehouse itself. Um,
Do you think I don't I assume this will not happen, but do you think would you take it on again if they brought you back to do your version of it?
yeah,
I
but
don't know. If,
show me the money. But yeah, absolutely.
yeah, because I wonder if I wonder if the yeah, because I've seen the final book in stores, but I've never giant case thing,
Yeah,
and I wonder if I wonder how everyone involved views the final project versus the kind of what could have been.
I know that like Mick the inker and Max the penciler, like they really wanted me to be on board. Like they kind of like they both said to me like I wish you were just like still working on this and we could just work for you on this because like this is your book. And but like they kind of had they had my blessing, and they did the best job that they possibly could. But and I think Pete was like I definitely got in contact with Pete afterwards, and he sent me like a weird email which is like yes, I really loved seeing your early drawings. Oh well, you will be remembered, though not necessarily properly remunerated. Bye bye. Like just a kind of like autistic, odd message. But I mean, not to take too much of a shit on Pete. He was like a really kind of amazing collaborator. One thing that was great about working with Pete, like when I was writing it, like I would say stuff to him like, let's say that you were trying to describe if you were trying to describe music to someone who had never heard music, how would you tell them, what would you say music was? How would you describe that? And Pete replied immediately with, I'm on it. And I'm like, what? And then like and so sent from my iPhone. And then
Mm-hmm.
an hour later he'd written this essay, and the essay was like in universe from the people in the Lifehouse as the Lifehouse was first coming online, and what it was like to live in a world without music. And it's almost like this sci-fi universe is just kind of still inside his mind all these years later, and it just kind of flows out like a torrent. Like it's just that you can turn it on and off like a tap. And
Interesting,
yeah,
almost like this is kind of just his way of viewing the world.
yeah, it's just kind of it's an interesting type of creativity. Like I've only like met a few people like that in my life. Like kind of some people who are just like obviously brilliant. Like I mean like they kind of just have like a mind that they can't switch off, and it just is, and just like
Sure.
creativity just sort of like tumbles out like a like a torrent, like a faucet has just been turned on, you know?
Yeah, almost they haven't learned because we often talk about Corey Lewis,
Yeah,
the Shark Tank cartoonist,
yeah,
and he's my roommate for a while, and one of the things about him that I really enjoyed is he doesn't know he doesn't seem aware that other humans process the universe differently than he does, and I mean this in a very positive way.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and yeah, almost that kind of thing, because I feel like there's a lot of brilliant artists that understand how to kind of wall themselves off from acting about it like all the
yeah,
time.
yeah. I met this one person who who wanted me to work on a project, and she had like this. I like to say like she had one half of a brilliant mind because like when I was talking to her, like she had this whole sci-fi universe in her head, and she knew every single detail of it. Like she knew like the geography of every street in this city. She knew like where every city was, and then she knew like what like all 10 planets of their solar system was called, and like what the people on it were like, and it was like so rich and involved, this like dense world that she was just like lived in her mind, like this mind castle she created. And like when I was talking to her, she was like just sketching like rapidly, like almost like graphomania, you know, like
Right.
and but the thing was like everything she was saying was just terrible and dumb. And it was like Harry Potter, the Matrix. Like it was just like not anything clever at all. It was, but and like it, and yet like I was like, yeah, this person's got one half of a brilliant mind. It's you rarely meet people with both halves. I think like I have like good ideas, but like I don't have that kind of sort of Rain Man sort of ability to just like hold like these crystalline 3D universes in my mind, like someone like Alan Moore seems to, or well, like this lady does, and but
Because I imagine a lot of that is them using it to process their life and using their all their free time to be like, because I've had friends that have kind of unrealized story ideas they want, and they just want they sit around and pontificate about it. It's like what they do for fun is they're
yeah,
kind of build on the world and think about the characters as real people. And I mean, my problem is that I need to get things done so much that I don't really have time to spend as much time in a universe
mhm,
more than it takes to make the thing. Although luckily, I will say something great about comics is it takes you like 6 or 10 hours to do a page. So
yeah,
that's a lot of time to look at a piece of paper and be thinking. So there's elements of that, like,
mhm,
but I think that the thinking of it without doing it is a very specific type of person. And it
yeah,
kind of creates more of a fleshed out world maybe
mm,
before it happens than the people. Because I feel like it'd be hard to sit around and think about something for 10 years and then be like, here's page one. It almost puts too much weight on it because the
yeah.
reality is that things change once you're in it. Once you're in a story, the ending might seem your original ending might seem ridiculous and needs to be something else.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem I have. Like I kind of it's like I really admire the way you work, where you just kind of draw a page and you write it kind of as you're going, and because like I have to script and like I have to have it kind of nailed down, and I think like I worry that like if I just kind of did it without kind of stabilizers on the bike, you know, like if I just went kind of into the page and just wrote it on the page, I just kind of worry that it would be a load of old shit, you know, because like I never
That's my worry too. I just have to do it.
yeah,
But then you get the more severe versions, like people like like Jack Kirby's famously like wouldn't do layouts, as far as I understand.
oh
Or
god,
like I mentioned James Stocco earlier, is like he's a guy that like I found one note that he'd made about story, like he'd written down some things, but mostly he's just a guy that starts a page
yeah.
and would just draw the thing and ink the thing and isn't like pre-planning outside of his head, as far as I'm aware.
Well, I read one of Corey's scripts once. It was for like you remember that thing Dream Skills where it's like bullets have stopped working on human beings, so everyone has to
Oh,
use
they all
swords.
use swords.
Everyone has to use swords now, and the swords have got a Wi-Fi router in the hilt, so everyone has free Wi-Fi now. And and yeah, it was amazing. And I looked at one of the scripts for that, and like basically Corey had just like made the script like the perfect shade of pink, like he'd gone into page setup and made it pink. and then the rest of it was just like all like I'll get you, bang, just like shit like that. No stage
Right.
directions or anything, just kind of writing the sound effects. And yeah, but that's all he needs, like, because he knows what bang means, you know. Like, well, it wouldn't have been bang; it would have been like one of his very specific kind of sound effects. But
I wonder if there's because do you have? I often have the thing that if I'll make notes to myself and be like, oh, this is a. I have a kind of an internal, um, like what's the word? Like, I have symbols that I use to tell myself that the level of importance the notes are. So sometimes I'll make like a sunburst around a note to be like, this is a really good idea. Make sure to use this one. And sometimes I'll go back and read those, and it'll be like it'll say like, also he uses a spoon, and I'll be like, Brandon from 6 months ago, we are not the same person anymore, and I don't know what the hell you're trying to convey to me.
no, absolutely, I definitely have that. Like, I want to sort of like I know I can get the notes up on my phone because I was thinking like should I do that live and like look at my notes app, but then I was like, well, what if there's something like terrible in there that shouldn't be?
Right, it's all of your photos of you photoshopping different faces on your penis,
Yeah, exactly. It's like the
as we all have.
tattoo ideas. Do you ever hear like that playground rumor that Michael Jackson had a tattoo of his own face on his penis? Like that was what the kids in my
Oh,
school were.
that's a good one.
Yeah, yeah. That was what the kids in my school were. Okay, let's see. Loose ideas.
I feel like Michael Jackson isn't the kind of person that would want. I feel like he would not enjoy the process of getting a tattoo.
Well, but then again he's addicted to painkillers, right? So that he could at the very least like just get completely loaded on propofol. Um, okay,
I mean, that's not going to happen. He keeps doing those.
okay. So here we go. I found a note that I don't understand. Name of bad guy: Donald Beef. Like
That seems simple enough. The bad guy's name's Donald Beef.
Donald Beef, but
Hmm.
that's just
It's a
not.
good.
It's like not good, right?
I like that you're at a process where you're like, all right, let me write this down.
Yeah, that's like the most like crazy thing about it is that I actually thought to write it down. How about this one? A sports manga called J/O. It looks exactly like a regular sports manga, but instead of basketball or whatever, it's about championship jacking off. So you have
That's
like,
a great idea.
yeah, you can have announcers going, "Huh? What? Unbelievable! I've never seen this kind of technique." And hu-
Me and Carson did do a review of Dick Fight Island recently, which is like a bad Japanese, I guess not masturbation, but essentially like mutual masturbation girls manga made for idiots by idiots.
actually, this
I haven't done mine, by the way.
listen to this huge
Oh
page
yeah,
size close up of a dick with a fist around it and intense speed lines. The guy's head all small in the distance. What? Two hands with a twisting motion? It's never been done before in a local contest. And then like the three main characters are teenage versions of Joe, Matt, Chester Brown, and Seth.
that's getting really inside baseball, but
Yeah,
I
I
like.
guess so. Yeah. Well, like there's
Um,
yeah, I can send you the rest of this at some other
no,
point.
please, I need this. Um, I found a note of my own, by the way, where it just says it's a house, which is a serial killer mansion called Charles Mansion,
I like that.
and it looks like his face on the outside. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. Anyway, what are we looking at for the thing? We're getting off.
you're very yeah. Yeah, I love how much you love puns. You know, like that's like I just love how much you love it. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Uh,
It's something that I've really reined in a lot in my recent work because I also feel like it's something that requires a lot of work without a ton of payoff, and I feel like I realize that if things are viewed as comedy,
hmm.
then it requires a huge amount of work, and people look at it very. It's taken less seriously than if you do something serious. So,
Yeah, you sort of
uh,
lose the audience's trust. I hope you do some puns in the thing that you're going to do for me, though. Uh,
like you said, dude. Yeah, and I'm working on a jokey comic as well. So it looks like you've cobbled together a bunch of
yeah,
photographs.
yeah. So this is this is the Lifehouse itself, and it was like and what it essentially is the main relay station for the grid communications, and
Okay.
it was something that when Bobby worked for the Plus Tech for the Plus Bond Corporation, like, which is like the main kind of evil corporation in this. Bobby helped to build this. So that's why Bobby is able to construct the Lifehouse underneath it secretly. And so, yeah, we can kind of see Broadcasting House. This is like where BBC Radio 4 is broadcast from.
Nice.
What else can we see? This is like elements of Luigi Serafini's Codex Serafinowicz, like the. I think that's what it's called, Codex Seraphinius. Like it's this amazing Italian surrealist, and I wanted to like draw inspiration from that. And then we have Broadcasting House. No, not Broadcasting House. The Telecom Tower, which is like another like quite ugly British telecommunications building. And
Okay,
then
I like it.
we have the statue of Ariel.
Uh,
So so we've got a statue of Prospero here and a statue of Ariel here. Now Ariel and Prospero are from Shakespeare's The Tempest, but they're also bizarrely both built in BBC like buildings. So Broadcasting House has Prospero on the front, and Television Centre has got Ariel in the courtyard. And so I decided, like, in the reality of this universe, they would both be on the same building, which is the Lifehouse. Now,
in the middle of the lighthouse building there, are those Otomo pipes you've photoshopped on?
um,
Those guys right there.
oh, those, yes. Do you know what they are? They're from. Yeah, that's a very good spot. Yeah, I think they're from the cover for Memories. The
Yes.
Yeah, the anthology movie that Katsuhiro Otomo made. Yeah. So yeah, that's like a photo bash, I suppose. Like you see, like I've done a lot of like I've done
I
a
like
lot of
that.
like pure pure invention with a lot of these, but like yeah, I guess at some point I just decided, is it cutting corners or is it like just I felt like that kind of Gilliam-esque collage kind of suited the nature of the project, you know? So
Yeah, well, I mean, I personally think that a big element of art that a lot of doesn't get talked enough about is pulling things from around us. You know, like Mobius is famous for using a huge amount of photo reference to the point that he got sued by the Jimi Hendrix
yeah,
photographer. That
that's right.
Jimi Hendrix album
I
cover.
told you that the other day, didn't I? That was did I tell you that? Or
You brought it up, yeah. 'Cause I know there's a great. Sylvain Dupree has talked a huge amount about kind of the behind the scenes friendship with Mobius
yeah.
on his Facebook group, and it's really fascinating.
Oh wow.
I remember him talking a lot about how Mobius wasn't a huge Hendrix fan, but he got roped into doing a bunch of Hendrix illustrations. And at
Wow.
one point, I hope I'm remembering this right, but at one point, I think he had to do a portfolio. He made a deal with the photographer portfolio of Jimi Hendrix illustrations, and he was said something like, "Oh, people don't think I'm totally in love with Hendrix music or something." Although,
Well, it's funny
because
because
it's
like I mean, there is so much like overlap between what makes Hendrix such a compelling figure and what makes Mobius compelling. Like they're both kind of almost like lightning rods for like divine inspiration. You know, they
yeah, there's the
represent.
worst artists, worst musicians for people to think that you're obsessed with. So maybe it's, and I'm sure he enjoyed Hendrix. Like
Yeah,
Hendrix is great.
yeah, he is. I think so. I think we're done with the. Oh no! Oh yeah, there was one more bit of concept art, which is not this one. It was this one, which is just the top-down view of the top-down view of the Lifehouse. There you go.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I guess we can get back to the actual pages. So how far into it were we? Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we just kind of looked at the first couple.
We were here. This is where we were when it kind of like when it.
Okay, now with the context, I can actually see Jumbo
Yeah.
7 there. Is that Jumbo 1?
That's Jumbo One. Yeah. So this is 1977 when Jumbo One took over and destroyed music. And then she says, and this I think this is a line from one of Pete's original drafts. She says, "Only God's music from now on," referring to the chirping birds. Like, and I think that's like important. This idea that like music can't truly be suppressed. Like it's kind of it's there in the air. Like it's there in the song of animals, and for Mary, it's there in the burbling of the waters of the River Thames and stuff like that.
Sure.
I think this is a self cameo here. This
You just getting the hippie James getting punched by the
yeah.
by the
Well, yeah, because I like this. Like, who was it? Was it who originally had "This Machine Destroys Fascists"? Was it? It wasn't Johnny Cash, was it? It was I forget who it was. It's one of those like kind of rebel country singers,
Right.
and it's kind of like ironic because like it does not in fact destroy fascists at all, but and like so you see the guitar get like stomped on by the jackbooted
Oh,
thug, yeah.
right. I
Um,
mean, you can make the argument that music has certainly unified people to propel them against things, but
Absolutely, yeah, it has.
I mean, art is just to pontificate for a second here. I feel like art is a good tool against. By guessing both directions, because art that really delves into itself and tries to be actual art, I think, is a tool against kind of bad hive mind thinking, but it can also be a tool of bad hive mind thinking too.
Yeah, yeah, it can arts can sort of it can normalize a point of view and make that point of view attractive, you know, and that's why it's important. Like you know, it can yeah normalize. I think I was reading Robert Crumb saying the other day, like there's this prevailing idea that the counterculture of the 1960s died because like all the hippies just had to kind of grow up and get jobs, and Crumb says like this is not true. Like there was many just like very deliberate systemic kind of systemic and systematic ways in which like that counterculture movement was crushed essentially, and it was like they really did have something going on there in the 60s and 70s, and it really was like deliberately neutered and destroyed. Like the one.
Sure. I mean, just you look at what happened to the Black Panther Party, or even arguably, maybe I might sound a little conspiratorial here, but I have a whole book over here that's just talking about the CIA's involvement in Charles Manson.
Is the book called Chaos?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good book. Like, can you hold it up to the camera? Let's get a plug in.
Let me go grab it here.
Right.
If I can find it, I'm going to say that.
Yeah, let's get a plug in for this book because whenever I try to describe this book to people, like it sounds so far fetched and so conspiratorial. Like it's essentially saying that the
Here it
CIA
is.
the CIA were very aware of Charles Manson. Like they helped cover up some of his murders. Like and the whole story of like how Charles Manson was trying to start a race war called Helter Skelter and all of that kind of shit. That is a cover story for what was really going on, and it goes all the way up to the top of the CIA. Like Charles Manson was trained as an he was trained in like MK Ultra mind control techniques, and when you just kind of
Sure.
say it, when you say it out loud, it sounds so far fetched that it's like well, it's just immediately you sound like you're in fucking wackadoodle territory.
I mean, there's enough things that the CIA has admitted to, or is kind of like, like there's just, I think there's a Joe Rogan interview with Freeway Rick Ross up now, and it's just like he's a guy who's just like is the guy who was selling crack cocaine in South Central Los Angeles
Yeah.
tied to the CIA. And if you talk about that with somebody who hasn't delved into that themselves, you sound like an absolute nut.
Oh wow. That's so yeah. Like so Ice Cube wasn't lying. Like the CIA was just pushing the crack into black neighborhoods. Like yeah, he was
Yeah, it's pretty well documented at this point.
yeah, it's fucked up. Yeah, and so this Manson book just like builds brick by brick, case by case, the all of the incredibly compelling evidence that this was totally covered up. The CIA knew all about him and even helped him cover up some of his murders and get away with them. Like it's so fucking crazy. Like it's
Yeah,
really
it's very fast. And there's an element of that being statecraft. Like if you are running a nation and you have people that are essentially destabilizing the nation, it makes sense that the people whose job it is to kind of keep the status quo wouldn't just be like, oh well, everyone's destabilizing the foundation of what we have. Let's just let it roll.
yeah.
It sounds insane, but I can see it's not like these are purely evil people. I mean, they're certainly doing evil actions, but it's like there is a statecraft element of like the horrible things of
Mhm.
the CIA was doing. I mean, the crack's hard to argue
They
a
were
positive. It made them a lot of money, I imagine.
it made them a lot of money, and it's how they dealt with what they saw as the black problem. Like it's really
Sure.
disgusting what like they did to black people in America. Like it's
That is true.
you just can't ring the bell loud enough. Like it's. I mean, the fact that like we were fed a narrative that slavery ended in the United States when in fact it didn't. Like black men are still locked up for, on spurious charges and put into these privately owned prisons where they're made to do slave labor. Like slavery never ended in the United States, and when you kind of like realize that, you wonder why isn't everyone just like screaming this from the rooftops all the time? And it's because this narrative is absolutely quashed and suppressed in the United States. It's yeah. Anyway, but
Well, I mean, it's kind of there's a certain element of like a pyramid scheme on things
yeah,
where you want to have like until we get sentient robots that we can put in essentially slave. It's like there's always going to be nightmare people that are doing whatever they can for the cheapest labor imaginable. And right now, it's like, and not just America though, but I mean, this is kind of a world problem of
mm,
like like every element of there's all people that are there's always going to be people that are exploit other people as bad as possible for money.
yeah. It's true, and these are all themes, by the way, that this book kind of gets into, and we're kind of baked into Pete's original kind of premise. I just want to show
Sure.
you a little detail here. I wonder if I can zoom in. It's kind of like sort of slightly inconsistent with when it lets me zoom in and when it doesn't.
For the crowd there,
Yeah,
were you drawing specific people? Because you mentioned your hippie self is like a stand-in with the guy with the guitar.
yeah. I think I can't remember where I got the other people from, but I think they're all from
You can
like
see the note.
they were, I think they were from like the Oz trial and I think and figures from Woodstock and counterculture and stuff like that. But they were all kind of very
And Oz is the British magazine that had like an obscenity trial. Is that correct?
absolutely, yeah, yeah. And their mascot was Robert Crumb's Honey Bunch Kaminsky. So they had like a gigantic float, like a gigantic model of the nude Honey Bunch Kaminsky, like going down the.
Which is such a massive cultural difference between then and now, because that was like the counterculture essentially, like all behind this sexualized image of a 13-year-old girl.
It's crazy, yeah. It's so fucking crazy. Like, yeah, like it would not fly today. Like, was well, like I mean, it definitely doesn't. So, okay, here's. I just wanted to show off this little detail. Can you tell what room this is in the music college?
Oh, is it a specific room?
Yeah, I'll just tell you, it's the library, and the clue is this sign here
Oh,
because that means in musical notation that means quiet. So
oh, nice.
yeah, yeah, I was pretty pleased with that one. Uh,
This is why Sean needed to be in here, because
once,
he's
yeah,
actual. No,
he would have known that. Yeah. So yeah, uh,
yeah, and something I really appreciate about your work is you have these. Something I was noticing in your Yuki and the Bad Way book is you bookend scenes a lot with really beautiful imagery that kind of works as an illustration by itself. Something I think about a lot is how comic books aren't illustration necessarily, because it's like
yeah,
it's there's a language element where you want to talk, you want to explain things through pictures,
yeah,
and so there's a bit of that in illustration too. But oftentimes, illustration, like viewing every panel as an illustration, can get in the way of telling a story. But you manage to like use. I mean, even on this page here that you've got up is like the Big Ben is just
yeah.
like that's a beautiful illustration by itself.
Let's
And
see.
then you've got the comic panels that work more as comics.
Let's bring that in. Yeah. But by the way, this whole book is like in like square format because so it's like this like a vinyl record, you know. So let's see. Let's what's going on here. There's a lot going on here. This
I
is
really like that fourth panel.
the fourth panel.
Yeah, the girl on the
Yeah,
fancy chair.
on a chaise lounge. Yeah, 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 yeah. There's a lot going on here. So this is like Jumbo Seven kind of talking to the British people who, as they're all in their experience chairs, and she's living this incredibly hedonistic lifestyle, right? And so, like, what can we see here? This, right, that there is, it's a kind of a punch bowl, like but it's
Oh,
shaped,
nice.
but it's shaped like a bagpipe, and it's shaped like the way Hieronymus Bosch would have drawn a bagpipe. And
Yeah.
because for Hieronymus Bosch, the bagpipe was symbolic of drunkenness, hedonism, and like debauchery, which is, as someone whose father is Scottish, that's a very funny thing to think, like but yeah, what else have we got going on here? Like, oh yeah, this is actually a Hieronymus Bosch giraffe. Like
I like that. I mean, the bagpipe. I will argue that the bagpipe is a pretty crazy instrument. Like if you're coming from another culture and you see somebody just has this like wow wow wow.
yeah. No, I remember when I first went to Scotland, and I first heard the bagpipe, just like, "Arr!" and like my dad was like, so, nudging me. So, like, does that cause a stirring in your loins? Like, do you feel like? I was like, no, no. like, sounds.
I'm of Scottish descent as well, and
Oh yeah.
I have. There's a Graham tartan, so I like that
Oh
exists.
wow, that's cool.
Plaid,
Yeah,
which I should use in my work more. What's this thing on the far right where the guy's carrying around this like bizarre open pea pod full of eyeballs?
it's a good question. I don't know. I like it's more kind of Boschian imagery, like it's like a almost like a chestnut, and there's like a kind of very yonic shape. But like, yeah, some of these details, like I couldn't possibly tell you what they were. Like I don't know what this guy holding this giant pencil is. Like oh, I don't. Yeah, I I wish I knew. Like I think it refers to something that we see later on. I guess we can keep a lookout for that. But yeah, I think it's for the rocket that we see later. And yeah,
She has this like Jumbo Seven, or all the Jumbos have this very kind of Madonna, um, Lady Gaga
yeah,
imagery to them, which
that's it.
yeah, which is interesting. It's the music. I guess the villain in a music thing would also look like a musician.
That's what I wanted. Yeah, I wanted her to be like a rock star. She has like kind of rock star charisma, and she strides around with that kind of self-possessed confidence. That's why she's kind of like holding a microphone like this, like as she gives her big address to the.
Right. Was that imagery on the couch? Do you think that that was referenced from something? Because it has a very like rock and roll album cover look.
I'm pretty sure that my partner at the time posed for that. So yeah, I think that's where that came from. Uh, what else? What else? So we got Big Ben and
Oh yeah, and you've got some more tubes, like some pipes going into to Big
yeah,
Ben as well.
yeah. We've got the British
Those
flag, which
tanks
is
are great.
a big seven. Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to design as much as I possibly could. So like, yeah,
So every jumbo that ascends, like her daughter, they'll change the flag to an eight. Is the idea?
yeah. Exactly. I think what we yeah, ultimately, like this character Velatania is going to become Jumbo 8. And the 8, of
Mm-hmm.
course, is a Mobius strip. And the idea is that Velatania is going to kind of be the final Jumbo who kind of rules forever. Because, so yeah, that's the 8 on his
It's a
side
cool
is
idea.
the symbol of infinity. Okay, let's do the next page.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun because, like, I haven't, like, looked at these since I did them. Like, I mean, because like when you kind of like lose when the project kind of like gets away from you like it did with this, like you kind of feel a bit heartbroken and you don't really want to look at it anymore, so it's kind of quite cathartic to look at all this.
That's good. Yeah, I mean they're interesting to see the pages, and I'm fascinated to see what happened to them afterwards now too.
Yeah. So this is like this description, this is a scene
So cool.
described in it's in Pete's original 1971 draft. Like Jumbo has like a kind of louche kind of female plaything just kind of like lying on a chaise lounge. Like
Mhm.
Jumbo has a old foul-mouthed parrot that has its own butler. Like even his parrot has got a butler. Like
The guy has the face of someone who knows he's a parrot's butler.
exactly, yeah, exactly. And yeah,
I like that there's a globe in the room with that on the wall. Like, I'm gonna need a globe in here.
yeah. That's yeah. I think like the globe is attached to the parrot's plinth. But yeah, this is kind of like environmental storytelling. We can sort of see that like a gigantic wall was erected around Britain, and everywhere else in the world just got completely nuked into oblivion.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just like a way.
Oh, I see the whole.
Yeah, yeah. Which I think this is borrowed from Appleseed. Like, what's his name, Shiro. Like he has like a polar projection map as well in Appleseed, where we can see exactly which countries, like, how the topography of the world changed after the war.
Yeah, he doesn't use it as a background imagery in a panel. It's always like the separate notes thing. So this is a cool
Yeah,
way to kind of
yeah,
combine the two.
incorporate it. Yeah. What else is going on in here?
Is the naked lady on the chaise lounge a character at all, or is she just kind of there for decoration?
She's like Jumbo's plaything as described by Pete, and I can't remember if she has her own kind of agency later on in the story. So here's Brick, and he's like, every time we see Brick, he's like obsessively checking these like printouts, and yeah, so there's no screens or monitors in this story. It's and this is like I suppose a reference a little bit to my dad, who was a computer programmer before monitors. Like, so they had like line printers where it was like very rare for anyone to actually have like a screen on their computer. You would just have like a line printer, and so that's why there's like these waste paper baskets everywhere with shredded paper. And the reason Brick is doing this, it's never made clear, but he is the one springing Mary from the experience. Oh, great.
Interesting. Do you think there's anything? I'm just keying into the thing that both of the villain characters, like he's a gay man and she is at least into women a bit. If there's anything touching on the idea of taking these fascist characters and also making them homosexuals and interesting,
Yeah,
is it that they're
it's an
because
interesting.
he's secret?
Well, yeah, but he's also secretly a good guy. That's the thing. Like he and Bobby are and so he's a double agent essentially. Like here we see in these three panels we see he's got his own agenda. He's like he's checking these readouts to to see what's happening to Mary and see if this is going to lead him to Bobby. And then he's turning around and kind of like pretending to be this confident and almost kind of, she almost talks to him like he might talk to a lover, like, and that's kind of Pete's characterization of this character. So yeah, he's sort of playing. How would you say? Like he's playing both sides. Like he's a double agent. Yeah. But yeah, I guess it's kind of. Yeah, I guess there's like more queerness in this book than most things I've worked on. Like, although I guess the character Jin is kind of, she's like Dumbledore gay, like she's gay, but it like never seems to come up in the stories I write. But yeah, like yeah, Brick and
Well, it's interesting because Jin's your main character from UK
yeah,
in a Bad Way.
yeah, and we do kind of
Yeah,
we hint at her, we hint at her sexuality, like, but it's never really part of the story. Um,
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I guess it's also just like real humans that where it's like I know Steve's gay, but I've never met a boyfriend he's got.
yeah. Whereas, yeah, I think Bobby and Brick's love story would have been like a serious part of the whole thing, and it is what gives him a character with like pathos. There's that song, the Who song "Behind Blue Eyes," and people like say, "Oh yeah, he wrote this song about the character of Jumbo." Like the song is like nobody knows what it's like to be the bad guy, the sad guy. You know that one.
Yeah.
And I read like hundreds of interviews with Pete, and he alternately says it's about Brick and about Jumbo. He kind of hadn't made up his mind really, but Brick is that guy. Like he's behind Blue Eyes. Like he's the guy who everyone thinks is this monster, this boorish kind of fascistic kind of bully boy, but actually he's secretly just he's a good guy. He wants what's best for everybody, and he wants to find the man he loves again. He wants to get back with Bobby. So yeah, there's a complexity, I suppose, to this character. Now I have no idea if any of that complexity made it into the final product. But yeah, I was gonna have like a lot of fun, kind of exploring this character, But there you go. You just
Yeah, and it's a fun idea to have. It's a fun idea when you write a character to have things about them that you're kind of is in your head and you're kind of seeping out a little bit. And like this, it sounds like it would be a big reveal in your story that he's a good guy.
Yeah, it's something of a twist. Yeah, it's as I recall, but the reader is kind of invited to put it together. The reader is invited to figure out that he's on the side of the good guys. Like here we can kind of see this is Mary's experience suit programming. So it says subject Mary Cropper, and we can see that she's starts out vicar, actress, just things that you might, and then like crippled child, murderer, 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 and now she's another imprisoned murderer, and that's like kind of what she's been dreaming every night. And yeah,
Okay, and
Brick is like making sure that that gets shredded and no one gets to see it.
so they're purposely doing that to her.
Yeah, it's Brick. He's trying to induce karma death, and karma death will cause her to eject from the system.
Okay, just to get her out of the
Yeah,
matrix.
yeah, absolutely. So
There's an interesting idea too of like, I feel like you're like a big part of your role in this project is also interpreting intent from Pete Townsend, which is an interesting
yeah,
thing.
absolutely. And I had
Feel
to
like a
sort of
artistic.
I had to kind of because the thing about the Lifehouse is it has these two science fiction ideas baked into it that don't seem to connect up. Like you have the experience suits that will give you a lifetime of experiences every night, and then you have the Lifehouse project where the lifelines of human beings were played over each other to induce like a spiritual awakening, and it's not 100% clear like how those line up in Pete's original draft and like what they have to do with each other. And so
Well, is the idea the experience suits are false experiences and the life house is a real experience? Is that
yeah, so thematically that kind of matches up, but like in terms of like as a science fiction conceit, it's like are these two separate science fiction conceits or are they kind of do they dovetail in any way? And so
okay?
I had to sort of figure out a way in which they can kind of be part of the same thing. So it's like they're both part of the same technology, which Bobby kind of one of them Bobby basically discovered by accident. And here's the thing: like I haven't read this since 2019, and like I know that at some point like I had all of this kind of just right in the forefront of my mind, and like I knew how it all connected together, and now it's been a while. So
Right, you're almost reviewing what James from years ago
yeah, and
thought, and then,
I'm half remembering a lot of it. So these are cryogenic. So this is Bobby's lab, and we don't see Bobby yet, but we just hear his voice, and
okay,
we see here four separate cryogenic freezing pods, and this is the Who. This is the Who about to be unfrozen.
excellent.
Yeah, yeah, and this is all like the contraband musical instruments.
I like that you've photoshopped a real guitar in here.
Yeah, that's a little lazy. I think that might have been Pete's or something. I can't remember quite where I got that from.
I'll do that when I do my layout too. Is I'll just like have a bunch. I'll have rough stick figure layouts, and then I'll have a bunch of the reference I use in the same on the same page in Photoshop.
Oh, and this was actually I didn't draw this. I just realized I kind of I did the thumbnails for this, but this all the penciling on this was by my assistant at the time, Abby, uh,
Okay,
Abby Lupine. So yeah, so
rabbit in French.
what's that?
Is that rabbit in French?
I think so. Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, I use assistants on like only a few pages, and I'll kind of like I'll call them out when I see them. So what's oh
Okay,
yeah, this is like the chemical. I guess I wrote this in. I can't quite tell, but that's the chemical components for glycerol, which is like, and then you can see glycerol here as well, which is like how you. It's part of the part of what you would use to like freeze a human body. Um,
right, with very kind of a Akira Akira placement on it
yeah, yeah.
on the.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's very like the Akira things. Yeah, like it's just. I guess I just tried my best to kind of like research everything I was gonna have in this and sort of know what I was
Sure.
talking about. Um, so this is Mary being sprung from the experience suit. She now finds that she can just kind of like she now finds that the cell is open in her kind of prisoner dream, and she's going to leave.
So this is the Mary character is she inside of the suit still at this point? Is this like
Yeah,
a dream Matrix version of her?
absolutely. This is inside the experience suit, and she's yeah, and essentially her experience has been hacked, right? So she comes out of the prison and then she finds incongruously this London Underground entrance, subway entrance in the middle of this deep dark wood. And then she goes in there and just finds like a blank wall, and then she is able to phase through the wall. Let's see, like yeah, this is like one of those things where I'm kind of like embarrassed of the drawings, but I just like I know that if I'd been able to finish it the way I wanted to finish it, like I could have made it look good, you know? It's like
I'm impressed that you're drawing the entire figure in that second panel, even though you're erasing it.
yeah, I like to do that. Like I like to know that the figure works, you know? Like
I mean, even the ear placement on the previous panel, it's like you're figuring out where the ear is, even though you're not going to show it.
here's the thing, like I'm good at drawing ears. Like that's the one like I kind of like don't toot my own horn much about my figure drawing abilities, but like an
Sure.
an ear is just like the one thing where I just have it fucking down. Like like I know what an ear looks like from any angle in any
This is an interesting topic of conversation because I feel like something that gets brought up. I think early, way back in the beginning of our yesterday talk on this, I mentioned the idea of interacting with people that were a little self-important, but it actually are important.
yeah.
And there's an interesting element of like I feel like as artists, it's really important that we have self-confidence in things. Like it's something that's kind of bothered me a bit about the kind of like nerd artist archetype
Yeah.
is being like, I suck, I'm no good, this book is $50, you know. And I feel like it's disrespectful to the reader and I think as artists a certain element of us being like, no, I'm really good, this is worth the cover price, you guys should buy it,
Yeah,
you
I
know.
know. I've always gone by that philosophy. Like you should at least get good at it if you're gonna like demand people look at it.
Yeah, have you read any Murakami books? He talks about ears a lot.
Who's that?
Haruki Murakami, I think his name is, the Japanese author.
Oh right, you know, yeah, I've read one of them. I think I began reading one of the short stories in like Hard Boiled Wonderland, but I haven't like delved deeply
uh,
into his work.
Harville Wonderland at the End of the World is that's probably my
Yeah,
favorite book by his.
yeah, yeah,
It has a great section on it about how you can tell someone's personality by the couch in their home because like having a nice car just requires money, but a good couch requires taste and money.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't look at my couch.
I have a couch that I was second-handed from a porn performer that looks like it was, you know, a, a knockoff version of somebody trying to make a fancy Versailles couch that you could buy for $20. So I don't know if I'm going to talk.
Oh, like a yes, I've seen that couch. It's very iconic. I think of it as the Brandon couch. Yeah,
Oh, good. Yeah, I drew it on my. Did a cover for Penthouse Comics recently, and I did the
yeah.
cover. Drew the
It
cover.
was very cool that cover. So let's see. I think like we've got reappearance of
And this is her actually leaving the suit. Like,
yeah. This is her leaving the suit. Yeah, we've got like a reappearance of magpies here, and like So do you know about like the magpie rhyme? Like in Britain, when you see a magpie, what you do?
no,
So if you see a magpie, you say "Morning, Mister Magpie." That's if you see one magpie. But then there's more to it. There's like a rhyme based on how many magpies you see is like how your day's gonna go, right? So it's like one for sorrow, two for joy, three for a girl, and four for a boy. This is I think if you're like trying to predict a pregnancy, and then
okay,
five for silver, six for gold, seven for a secret never to be told, and so I think because it's so specifically British, I wanted to have that kind of magpie code in this story. So there are two magpies. There's two magpies on this panel, so that's two for joy, right? And this like this magpie code is like all the way through the book. And again, this is another thing that the creative team that came after me did not ask about. So like, I don't think that magpie code holds consistently throughout.
yeah, I mean that's a really specific thing. That is interesting. There's a lot of things that you do I almost think of it as it's like the roots. It's like we see a tree above
Mm.
ground, and there's the huge root system. It's like there's a lot of storytelling root system that it helps to have when you're doing a story. I always think back to a friend of mine I grew up with was doing a really cool comic once. This guy used the pen name Ludrow. Did a
Yeah.
thing called Dagger Proof Mummy in that Island magazine I was editing. He once did a comic where he had a character who, every time that character appeared in the comic, he wanted to draw him farther and closer to the left of the panel. So he starts off in the middle of a page,
Oh
and
wow.
then he slowly nudges him. And so at the end of it, he's just like squished in the bottom left of every panel he's in.
Oh wow. That's such a cool conceit. And what did it like symbolize?
I don't know. I think it was just a game he was playing with himself, which I think is something that, like, it's an interesting thing that, like, I try to think about that a lot because I feel like as cartoonists, the things that, there's the famous story of how Wally Wallace would every time he drew Power Girl,
Mhm.
every issue he would try to draw her chest slightly larger to see how far he can get away with just expanding her chest.
That's amazing. I love that. Yeah, I think we've got like some storytelling details here. Like we see this character of Dave, and he's got like a revolver, but the kind of the actual revolver part of it has been removed. Like because I think this is something about how he's clearly had to do service for Jumbo, but they're not allowed to kind of have guns in this reality or something like that.
I like when you're doing, because this is something that kind of is back to the first page that you showed us, is you draw these giant structures and sometimes with these little tiny wheels, which I really like. It reminds me of
Mhm.
my friend Farrell Dalrymple got really into drawing really tiny feet on his characters, which just reminds me of the
Yeah,
mechanical version of it.
yeah. I think I sort of wanted it to look like a Robert Crumb car, So it's got the kind of like almost big-footed sort of nature. Like it's kind of, but yeah. I wish I'd made the tracks bigger. Like I wish I'd kind of done that. But this is actually like
I like it as a stylistic thing.
yeah. It's one of those they have these like a mobile command platform like where they have like a gigantic caterpillar treaded platform to move a rocket like NASA have these at their sites so you can like move a rocket from one place to another. It's like a gig and so when I originally read Pete Townsend's first draft, it ends with like a rocket taking off and going up into the sky, and the characters of Ray and Sally they watch this rocket take off, and it's never really explained what it is. And so I asked Pete Townsend like, what was this rocket? And he said, "Oh yeah, that's God, right?" And I was like, "Well, okay, like that. I can't quite see how that makes sense, but I'm gonna make this work." So I have this kind of plot which I picked up from the 1975 draft, which is that Jumbo wants to colonize other worlds. Like that's kind of her big idea is that because Earth is ruined, she wants to colonize the next world, and so that's why her it says on the rocket, "You're home away from home," which means the next planet they find will be the home away from home. But so the idea is the rocket terraforms the planet. It kind of releases a huge explosion and then releases tremendous, which and the explosion like heats the planet that it finds to a livable temperature, and then the canisters of oxygen on board will fill the atmosphere with oxygen, and so thus creating a kind of livable planet. And yeah, and so and it's kind of like slightly magical sort of thinking. Like it's not fully explained how the terraforming process works, but that is what Jumbo kind of claims to be doing. Um, and so this is why "Your home away from home" is the slogan on it, because if you look down the side, it actually spells out YHWH, which is the like the Hebrew tetragrammon, like the way that they write the true name of God, Yahweh. Um,
Okay.
yeah. So so yeah, it's if it's a rocket that terraforms a planet, if it's a rocket that creates life from nothing, then that rocket
It's a
is
god rock.
it's God. Yeah. So and at the end of the story, like the rocket kind of disobeys Jumbo's orders and kind of subverts her mission, and so it almost it is like God has stepped in, and the rocket is God. The rocket has kind of granted certain characters in the story a new life and taken away, like it's a kind of cataclysmic flood-like event, where
Does it just explode on Earth?
it comes
Kind of
back
terraforms
it comes back down to earth. Yeah, after the Lifehouse kind of is a success, and all the kind of people who have escaped the grid are kind of sucked back up into the they achieve enlightenment and disappear, as in Pete's draft. But then every other person who was in the grid, they too achieve enlightenment. So only Ray and Sally in their kind of nuclear bomb proof mobile home are able to withstand. They become almost like Adam and Eve they become like Adam and Eve in this new world, this new terraformed Earth, with everybody else either spirited away to the next plane of existence, or they die in the blast, as which is what happens to Jumbo. I guess like Brick sacrifices himself, like to make sure that the plan goes, that the Lifehouse kind of is a success.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, and anyway, when they like finally made this, they moved the away like one space over to the left, so it no longer spells Yahweh. Like they clearly didn't catch it. I mean, they didn't ask me like what anything meant, so like it never kind of happened,
Oh, that's frustrating. But
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it feels like an analog for life. Like, the
yeah.
best plans of the best laid plans.
The best laid plans of mice and men go awry. Yeah, yeah, it's a crazy one, man. Like I'm really glad that I got the opportunity to kind of talk through this. Like even though like I'm very tired and I'm rambling a lot and kind of not kind of half remembering most of this stuff, but like I'm really glad that I got to kind of talk it through properly, and yeah, it's good to kind of good to be able to finally show this to people and talk about it, and
Certainly, yeah.
yeah. So hang on, I think
Yeah, and I'm excited for your new stuff to come out too, and to have more people kind of have access to the work. Because I think that the frustrating thing about this project is that you put all this work into a project that then isn't really your vision at the end that you're. And I know it's a weird project because you're brought in to kind of take the Who's vision and do it through yourself as an artistic filter,
yeah.
but it is like huge amount of your art and time put into a thing that then isn't the final thing. So I'm excited for your next work and for your new work to be seen by people as
Yeah,
entirely yours.
absolutely. Like I think I just had to give myself one. Like I was like, okay, I've had sort of too many projects that just kind of didn't go the way I wanted. So like, fuck it. I'm just gonna like dip into my savings basically and just spend as much time as I can just making something that's purely mine. And that was UK in a Bad Way, which you've read, and so yeah,
Yeah, it's a fantastic book too.
yeah. Thank you, man.
So it's nice to read UK in a Bad Way after this and seeing that you've returned.
Yeah, I'm back,
Yeah,
baby.
so I'm excited for more people to see that one too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Should we call it there?
Yeah, yeah. Well, good talking, James, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll do more stuff with you on talking comics, because there's a lot to talk about.
Is that what this is
And thanks
called?
everyone for listening.
Is that what this podcast is called? Talking comics.
The me and you can be called talking comics.
Okay. And by the way, me and Brandon also have a podcast called Bone Juice, which you should all listen to.
Oh, does that exist yet?
It's well, I guess by the time this goes out, it will, right?
Yeah, yeah. We'll
Yeah.
put that up. It's even more rambling than this. So God
Yeah.
bless you. Find people that are willing to listen to us.
Okay. Bye, bye, folks. That was it was fun. Thank you so much for listening this far.
Yeah, and thanks for talking, James.